Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a terrifying, true legend from Red River, Tennessee. We're going to trace a chilling 4-year span, starting right in 1817, and map out an intricate, dramatic narrative of what has literally become one of the most famous hauntings in American history, the Bell Witch.
Picture this. You're walking through your farm, and suddenly you spot an impossible creature. Our source material tells us that in 1817, a farmer named John Bell was out in his fields when he saw something totally bizarre. It was about the size of a large dog, but get this, it had the head of a rabbit. Bell's immediate, instinctive reaction. He pointed his gun and pulled the trigger. But the very second that gunshot shattered the peace of the farm, the creature simply vanished.
Section 1. The Rabbit-Headed Dog, an impossible creature.
This really highlights the jarring contrast at the core of this whole story. On one hand, you have the completely ordinary sweat and soil reality of a 19th century farmer just tending his crops. And on the other, a sudden, impossible, vanishing entity. Now, some locals later speculated this whole thing began as a curse from a neighbor named Kate Batts over a land dispute. But if you look at that strange field encounter, another interpretation is that by shooting first, Bell inadvertently enraged an invisible earth spirit that was honestly just out for a stroll. Whatever it actually was, the haunting was officially on.
Section 2. The torment begins. Invasion of the home. So, you can really see the terrifying escalation unfold here. It started out as just an auditory haunting, unexplained knocking on the outside walls, the clanking of unseen chains, and that super disturbing sound of something gnawing on wood. But then it moved to step 2, blankets being violently ripped from the family's beds in the dead of night. And finally, it escalated to step 3, focusing its violent wrath directly on the children, particularly 14-year-old Betsy. An invisible force would viciously pull her hair and slap her across the face.
Now, John Bell tried to keep this a secret for as long as he could, but eventually he broke down and confided in his neighbor, James Johnston, who actually came over and experienced the horrors for himself. Once word got out, the situation completely morphed. The entity actually transformed into a local attraction, acting like an oracle of Adams, Tennessee. People would travel to the Bell home just to hear it. The spirit would speak to them, it would answer riddles, and it even demonstrated the terrifying ability to seemingly be in 2 places at once. It flawlessly recited the words to 2 completely different sermons that were being preached at the exact same time, 13 miles apart. It's just wild.
Section 3. The General and the Witch, a massive spectacle.
So here is a crucial point. This haunting became such a massive public spectacle that it actually attracted none other than future U.S. President General Andrew Jackson. Jackson knew the Bell family pretty well because John's sons had fought under his command at the Battle of New Orleans. Well, according to the accounts, as Jackson's party approached the farm with a wagon of provisions, their wagon wheels inexplicably locked up. The men tried literally everything to free it, but nothing worked. Finally, Jackson shouts, "By the eternal boys, that must be the Bell Witch," and instantly, a disembodied voice echoed right back telling them she would see them later. And just like that, the wagon wheels spun free.
The haunting absolutely didn't spare Jackson's crew either. That night at the Bell House, in a moment of pure dark spectacle, one of Jackson's men, who had been boasting all day about being a witch tamer, was physically attacked and violently tossed right out of the house by an invisible force. Yeah, that was enough for the general. The very next morning, Jackson and his entire party fled the property. Jackson supposedly declared he would much rather fight the British again than take on the Bell Witch.
Section 4. A fatal poisoning. Targeted tragedy. 1820.
This year brings us to the absolute climax of our chronological thriller.
On the morning of December 20th, 1820, John Bell was found dead in his bed. Beside him was a mysterious vial containing a strange liquid that no one in the family recognized at all. To test it, they threw the contents of the vial straight into the fireplace. Instantly, the liquid exploded into this eerie, deeply unsettling blue flame. The witch had fulfilled her promise.
But the cruelty didn't just end with John Bell's death. Talk about adding incredible insult to fatal injury. The entity actually attended John Bell's funeral. With a huge crowd of mourners gathered at the graveyard, the invisible spirit began gleefully singing drinking songs, and that disembodied voice just kept echoing through the cemetery until the very last mourner had walked out through the gates.
Fast forward to 1821, and the entity refocused its relentless torment directly onto young Betsy Bell. The spirit seemed completely enraged by Betsy's recent engagement to a young man named Joshua Gardner. It tortured her relentlessly, day in and day out, until finally, Betsy just broke off the engagement.
And the crazy thing? Once the wedding was off, the spirit abruptly announced its departure, claimed it would return in 7 years, and just vanished.
Section 5. A reason for suffering. Analyzing the myth.
Okay, we really have to ask ourselves, whether you view this as a strictly authenticated historical event or just an exaggerated folklore legend, why does a terrifying 19th century ghost story about an invisible, murderous entity continue to captivate audiences worldwide today? Like, why does this specific narrative endure?
To understand that, the source text looks to a brilliant piece of literature. This quote from James Baldwin's Sonny's Blues anchors our understanding perfectly. Baldwin is writing about human suffering, and he notes, maybe it's better to do something to give it a reason, any reason. This really suggests that perhaps the Bell Witch was, at least in part, a psychological coping mechanism for a community trying desperately to explain why terrible things happen to good, well-respected people like the Bell family.
It's all about giving unexplainable suffering a face, a name, in this case Kate, or the Bell Witch, and a clear motive. Think about it. If a good man dies suddenly, or a family is struck by a string of totally chaotic tragedies, it shatters our sense of a fair world. But if those tragedies are the work of a vengeful witch, well, that actually provides a reason for an innocent family's unearned suffering. A reason that, psychologically speaking, is somehow much easier to swallow than just random, meaningless tragedy.
Looking back at this 4-year span, we see a relentlessly structured narrative of torment. From the inciting gunshot at the rabbit-headed dog in 1817 to the fatal poisoning of the father in 1820, all the way to the breaking of the daughter's engagement in 1821. It functions perfectly as a mechanism for human understanding. It literally takes the chaos of illness, death, and heartbreak and turns it into a structured story with a clear villain and a beginning, middle, and end.
And I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought to ponder. As the legend of the Bell Witch reminds us, we often build elaborate mythologies to organize our pain. But if we actually need monsters, ghosts, and witches to make sense of tragedy, what does that say about the true nature of our fears? Perhaps the only thing scarier than an invisible ghost is a world where human suffering has absolutely no reason at all. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the stories we tell in the dark.